to Donegal, playing in other cars. I kept borrowing cars and trying to do deals where I could. Started Lindisfarne, and on the run out to the first stage, I could smell gearbox oil. And I looked underneath, and the underside of the car was just covered in gearbox oil. Oh, bloody hell. Put it into fifth and just chug, 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 and get to the first stage, which is where Ford had service just before the first stage. And I arrived and I said, got a gearbox problem. There's oil everywhere. And Norman Masters, who was Roger's mechanic, went under. He says, "There's no drain plug in it. That's why you got no oil in it." And they got a drain plug, and I said, "Can't change the gearbox." No. Can't change the gearbox. We'll put some oil in it. You'll be all right. You'll be all right. Just don't be too brutal with it. And set off through the forests, and I was loving this car. Yes, the brake pedal was hard, but I had to push a bit bloody harder, and I was slinging it about and enjoying myself. And we came to first proper service after the first 2 stages or something. And Peter Ashcroft came over and he said, "You all right, lad?" Yeah. He said, "You sure you're not going too hard? Because the car's needed next week in Belgium." I said, "No, I'm not going hard, Peter, I promise you. I'm keeping it all in one piece." And Jim Porter came across and said, "You're 42 seconds in front of us after 2 stages. You're going too hard. Slow down." Anyway, to cut a long story short, the gearbox lasted. I enjoyed myself, and I made the biggest ever mistake of my life. I was told that under no circumstance must I beat Roger. And so, starting the last stage, I'm just over a minute ahead of him. And I was told somebody will be before the end of the stage to make sure that you don't beat Roger, but you finish second. And sure enough, there was Jim Porter standing in the track like this when I came round. And I sat for whatever it was, it felt like about an hour, and I finished second to Roger. And it was the biggest mistake of my life. And I say to any of you, if a team manager tells you you've got to slow down to let your teammate beat you, just get on with it. I then won the Clitheroe Scholarship, and that was the turning point in my career, if you like, and my rallying. Still got no money. Been out to Jamaica and won the 747 with David Richards sitting beside me in the Hillman Avenger, gave the Avenger its first ever rally win, and did Tour of Britons and things, and enjoyed myself, but making a little bit of money by getting sponsorship on the cars and that sort of thing. Won the Clitheroe Scholarship, and with it a factory Datsun. Little did I know, it only had about 185 horsepower, weighed about, was it 3 tons or 4 tons, Malcolm? Bloody heavy, weren't they? And first event was Snowman in Scotland. Jimmy McRae was there, Andrew Cowan was there, and I won. David Richards sitting with me, and I slung this thing through the forests, and I started to learn about tyres. You know, I had 3 compounds of tyre I could use, and I was able to play with, well, let's try the softer one now, shall we? Oh no, that was the wrong way to go, because it's now sliding around too much, and it was wonderful. But they were only little narrow Clitheroe tyres, and the thing had no power, but it was fun. Had a good year with that car. Ended the year doing the RAC in it with a suitcase on the boot lid, because the only sponsorship I could get was from people with custom cases, and they wanted to prove that their briefcase was waterproof. So what better place to put it than on the boot lid, getting soaking wet with everybody seeing it, and they were happy, and they paid for the rally. And I then had a phone call from a gentleman, I couldn't tell what the hell he was saying, and he told me his name was Wakabayashi from Nissan, and did I want a factory car? And more to the point, did I want a factory contract? Money, bloody hell, I can go down the pub. And so for 76 that would have been, I got promise of this factory Datsun for the British Championship. Start at 76 though, no car. The old dog of a Datsun, which, you know, it didn't have any power. We touched the engine all year. It just kept firing up, driving it, firing up, driving it. And so I made an inquiry to the Checkered Flag. Could I borrow their Lancia Stratos? And Graham Warner said no. Well, no, he didn't. He said, how much money have you got? Well, none. Well, you can't borrow my car then. You know, if you can't pay for it. It was a rental car. And I managed to put a deal together where I got him the front cover of Motorsport magazine, which in those days was quite important. And the editor of Motorsport magazine was my mate Clive Richardson, lived 4 doors from me in St Albans. And Clive said, yeah, I'll put it on the front cover if I can sit beside you. So there we are, going off to do the Tour of Dean. And we did some testing with it, and I realised actually it wasn't that quick. It had basically a bog standard Ferrari 346 engine, which gave, what, 210 horsepower or something?
246, but yeah, 210.
But the car was light and it was agile. And Graham kept saying, you've got to have tyres on it this wide. No, I want ones this wide, please. And we went into the Forest of Dean and went through the first stage, and I was loving it. The car just felt absolutely right. It was. I could make it dance, make it go where I wanted it to. And I went along the bottom of Sallow Valets, I went alongside the river. And it was muddy, but it found its way through the mud and then up the hill. And came to the end of the stage, and there was a board with all the times on. It's still in one piece. I haven't crashed it, and it you know, enjoying myself. And Clive said, "We're 5 seconds up on Stumpy." No, not been going quick enough. Stumpy Russell Brooks. For those of you who don't know. And we were leading. Went into the second stage, more time. And I'm starting to not quite believe this, that I'm running away from the factory escorts, I'm running away from everybody with this car that, not that quick, but tremendous traction. And went into the third stage, and I always remember it, there's a railway line. And I came onto the railway line, and I can't remember, it was second or third, went to change gears, we went over a jump. And in the Ferrari gearbox, the selectors, they hang out the front of the box to pick up the rails, or the rails hang out to pick up the selectors. I changed gear while we were in the air, and the selector was in the air, and so I've got nothing. Stirring. And we coasted, and Clive said, there's the main road. And coasted and started going down this hill towards the main road, and there, going across the front of us, is the Granada Estate service car, our Granada Estate service car. Ron, stop, you've just passed us, we're on the stage, no gears. And he'll know all about these gearboxes. Anyway, they came into the stage, and we jacked the car up, and I don't know what they did, they got a lever and flicked the selectors back in, and by this time we'd been sitting there for probably an hour. But because of the way timing was done in those days, we weren't OTL. All we had was a maximum for that stage, and then to get from the next stage. So we're running back in the 70s and 80s, and we got to the lunch hole, and I said, should we just jack it in? And the organisers came to me and said, sorry about what's happened, but the spectators are all staying out just to watch you. So please, don't jack it in, finish the event. And we finished, I don't know, 70th or something. But we had a ball, and we set fastest time on 9 stages or something. And I was in love with the Stratos. I wanted to do the Mintex, which was the next round of the National Championship. Still no Datsun. And I said to Graham, look, please, please, please. There's got to be some way we can, you know, let me use the Stratos. Nobody else has got anywhere near a win with it. Everyone's crashed it, put it in the trees, whatever. Can I? And eventually I persuaded him that I could use it on the Mintex. I can't remember what the deal was. I had to pay the entry fee or something, and he provided the car. And we did the Mintex, Andrew Marriott sitting beside me. Cropton over the big jump, landed it, a bit squint, his door wouldn't open. Suddenly we got problems. So I get to the end of Cropton 1, flying finish board, and I'm determined to hold it flat past the flying finish. You know, you're not going to lift off. And the one thing the Stratos again had was good top speed because you've got no frontal area. And held it flat across the flying finish, and suddenly realised that the marshal was in a bit of a silly place. And to cut a long story short, we reversed into the marshal's table at about 50 miles an hour. Paperwork gone, etc. And while we're trying to sort the time out, put the marshal's table back up again and get going again, Russell Brooks arrives, or John Brown arrives, and gave himself a time. And then we realised that actually what had happened was John Brown had taken our time, and we'd got John Brown's time. And he started a minute behind us. Okay, these things can be sorted. And rally went on. I thought we were leading quite comfortably going into the last stage on the Saturday night. Thick fog, and not very happy because you're so low down in a Stratos, so, you know, you can't see very much, and actually the fog is worse in a Stratos than it is an Escort. You look out sort of over the top of it, but you're trying to look through it and looking at the back of the headlights. And I'm in Dalby, and I've got it on the rev limiter down the finish straight in Dalby, and there's this bloody great big bang from behind, and what the hell was that? And logs, I could see logs. Put my foot on the brake pedal, metal to metal. The back had come open and had cut the brake pipes to the rear brakes. And so the back was acting as an air brake. Thank Christ it didn't come off. I reckon our English wire to hold it up was stronger than the Italian stuff. And so we've got an air brake slowing us and a great pile of logs, and I'm having a big, massive moment. Anyway, we get the end of the stage, and we hadn't really lost a lot of time, but we got no brakes, and we had all sorts of hassles. And we booked into the halfway halt late, because while we were trying to get some brakes back on it. Air-equipped lines that had been cut in the middle and no spares. And fine. Overnight, Roger's in the lead from Harry, Russell, John Taylor, I think, and then us. It's very close. In those days, very close. I look at the British Rally Championship today and think, Christ, this is a bit boring because they're too spread out. But anyway, next morning we're at the start of stage with a long railway line in it. You climb up, wiggly, and turn left onto a railway line.
The Gale rig.
Okay. And there's a bit of a hold up. And I walk up to Albert and I said, "You're getting too old, Albert." He looked at me and he said, "I said, I'm going to have you today. Don't worry, I'm going to have you." And off he goes up into the stage. And next thing we know, he's walking back out again. I rattled him so much, he put it off on the first right-hander. The rally went on, and the last stage of the event, we think we are about 45 seconds in the lead. The organisers, it's not like today where you can pull this out and see, oh, so-and-so's leading or whatever. We think we've got about a 45-second lead. But the last stage was on Oliver's Mount. And Graham Warner, bless him, racing man, loved his tyres that were this wide, and he got me a pair of Camaro slicks for the back. Well, you know, they were big tyres, and I can't remember what we had, some slicks on the front anyway. And we changed the gearing. On Stratos, you could undo 4 bolts and change the overall gearing very quickly. So changed the gearing from 115 mile an hour we'd had in the forests to 150 miles an hour for Oliver's Mount. Now, I don't know whether you know Oliver's Mount, but I tell you what, that last left over the crest at 150 miles an hour is quite hairy. But Marriott and I had decided it was shit or bust. Let's just go for it. If we win this stage by more than 15 seconds, it's all over anyway, because the minute that John Brown's going to argue about at the end is irrelevant. Anyway, we won the stage by about 40 seconds. Up in the fog along the top, the Stratos was absolutely fantastic, and I was looking sort of like this, and Marriott sort of saying right a bit, left a bit, left a bit, right a bit, and we're still flat. And it just sung round 2 laps of Oliver's Mount. And we get to the end, and I'm thinking, yeah, that's it done. That's it done. It's all over. And there's a bit of a commotion in the caravan. So eventually, because Marriott's having to get it in and out through my door anyway, so I'm having to get out the car to let him out of the car. I go into the caravan to see what's going on, to see a certain well-known co-driver with his finger between the hammer and the bell that was saying, telling them when the car finished the stage. So 2 cars had come in without having a time. Now, if I'd had this today, I'd have gone, click, got you, got a photograph of you, you bastard. But how do you prove it? Anyway, to cut a long story short, they cancelled the stage because 2 people had come in without getting a time. And that fat bastard, one of these days I'll get him. You know what I'm talking about.
I couldn't possibly imagine.
We get to the finish, and it took until 1:30 in the morning for it. I eventually protested the competence of the marshal at the end of Cropton for putting his table in such a bloody stupid place that I couldn't get a sideways Stratos past his damn table. And eventually the steward said, yeah, cancel the stage cancel, you win, well done. And I won the Mintex. Next morning, walked out the hotel, Graham Warner's standing there. He said, jacket? Yeah, okay. So I took the jacket off my back, which had checkered flag written on it. And check, please, the check for winning the event. And I thought, you bastard, you know, I've just won it. And you even take the jacket off my back. I've got the jacket back now. I found it in an auction. Paid 35 quid for it. Anyway, factory Datsuns, the rest of 76, 77. Peter Ashcroft said to me, do you want to drive a works escort? Do you want to help us develop the car? And I spent the year developing the escort. Towards the end of the year, won Lindisfarne, beating Roger, Ari, Russell, etc. RAC Rally, I was knackered. Started the event really, really tired, building cars, customs cars to pay for it. And Andy Marriott made a wrong slot in Wales. We were leading. When we got to Mountleith, we were leading. We had about a 30-second lead over Bjorn. And I went to sleep in the service car. And Andy Marriott got everything under control, and then he made a massive wrong slot. When we got back at the end of this wrong slot and through the next couple of stages, it was starting to ice over. So the snow and ice was getting worse for us. Instead of running car 3 on the road, we were then suddenly running sort of car 28 or something. And I was really slipping and sliding, and I said, come on, I want to put a pair of front tyres on the back. The narrower ones. Couldn't get the back wheels off. Which inspired that Ford had decided that they liked the colour of my wheels, or more to the point, they liked the fact that I was running a slightly softer Dunlop to the ones that Bjorn was running. And so they'd swapped wheels around, and I'd got Ford wheels on the back, and they wouldn't come off because the fitting was just slightly different. you had to change the whole back axle. And I ended up with the wrong back axle in. And we got back up to, was it York that year? Whatever it was, the halfway. And we're back up to third. But we'd slipped a long way back going through Wales on the stone ice. And got back into the lead again up into the Lake District. And running first car on the road. Been a delay. And went into the stage. I couldn't tell you what stage it was, but through a left, long straight, over a crest, and as I went over the crest, I could see lights down in the distance, so popped into fifth, and the road went that way. We went end over end into the trees. I've still got a scar from where I broke my wrist. Got the car out, and with a broken wrist, still finished fifth on the RAC that year. But what I didn't say to Ford was I'd already signed a contract to run Datsun's World Championship team for the next 5 years. And I wanted to go World Championship rallying. I'd done some World Championship rallies. I'd been to Bandama with Shekhar Mehta, navigating for him. I'd been involved in overseas events, and I wanted to do more. And so the chance to go with Datsun and go abroad I had to do it. Went to South Africa just after the RAC rally and gave Mazda its first ever international rally win with a teammate called Jody Scheckter, who had just won the World Motor Racing Championship. And we had a lot of fun. He couldn't understand how we could do the times we were doing on gravel, but it was a different way of driving. And eventually, just on the very last stage of the event, he came running up to me at the finish. "I've beaten you finally!" Great. I've been a mate of his ever since. Went to Japan, signed my contract with Nissan, and started running Nissan's World Championship operation. 79, 80, 81 was finished second in the World Championship. I had a lot of fun, learnt a lot, but towards the end it all became too much, trying to run the team and drive and team manage. It just all became too much. So the Japs persuaded me to put Tony Pond into one of the cars, into my car. When they persuaded me, I just had what I considered was my best ever result, which was winning Group 2 in Corsica. It doesn't sound very much. 5th overall, winning Group 2, but it was an event where there was over 1,000 kilometres of stage. One stage 240 kilometres long, and that was real rallying to me. Tarmac, now Datsun working on tarmac against the French. I remember getting hold of a little man called Jean Todt in the middle of a stage. Came around a corner and Guy Freclin's cars parked across the road and Jean Todt was co-driving. And Jean Todt comes over to my side of the car and said, "Andy, we stopped the stage. We stopped this stage." I said, "Bollocks to you." I got out of the car and I got Jean Todt by the throat. And there was a big drop down there and I was managing to push him over. And Guy Freclin moved the Talbot, funnily enough. I've been a friend of Jean Todt's ever since. He's never spoken to me since, but... super event. But the Japs said, "Look, we'd rather you put somebody else in the car," so we put Tony Pond in the car. He used the same chassis that I'd used, but with an extra 50 horsepower the following year and finished third. That was me then becoming team manager and not driving as much. Datsun thing finished.
Sorry to interrupt. You mentioned plenty of times there about you driving, but you did quite a bit of co-driving as well, didn't you? Or navigating.
I started as a navigator and did quite a lot of road rally. Road rally stuff was fun. I mean, motoring news events in Wales were to me great fun to be able to, and usually with drivers that not that experienced. So I was able to push them and look for the shortcuts and wind other people up and things. Yes, I enjoyed it. But that probably helped me with organising the team once I became team principal, team manager, whatever you want to say. I navigated for Shekhar Mehta in Bandama, 72, Christmas 72. We went and we did a recce, and I sort of knew a bit about pace notes, but not a lot. I learnt a lot from Shekhar, sitting there writing the notes and then reading them back to him. And it was 5 days non-stop. None of this bloody modern stuff of 2 stages and go to sleep and 2 stages have a meal. 5 days of in the car going. And so Shekhar and I had agreed where he would drive and I would navigate. And then he would sleep and I would drive and navigate. So I'd modified my pace notes and highlighted them. Didn't have highlighters in those days, but used a red biro for anything that looked bad. And I put down a mileage. So I had it on my knee, the pace notes, and was able to drive. And I knew that I'd got to look for 28.8 on the trip. And when I saw sort of 28.5, I've got to start backing off because it was a bad left. We led Bandama. We got to Man, which is on the west side of the Ivory Coast, going back south again. And we arrived at the service there, and we waited 2.5 hours for the second car to come in, which was Tony Fall in the factory Peugeot. And I was actually able to get some sleep, and Yvonne Mehta said, I'll stay awake and I'll wake you both up at the relevant moment. And the organisers eventually said, right, you're supposed to be an hour, but we're making it a 3-hour halt, so that Tony then had half an hour service to follow us. And we went off back down, going down to the coast. And I don't know what happened. I swear to this day I was reading the notes right. Shekhar suddenly went into a ditch on the right. And soft sand, quicksands. And I got out of the car and went up to my knees in quicksand. I've still got the marks on my leg just from it to today. I got bitten by all sorts of things. And I realised we weren't going to get out, so I ran down. I looked at my notes, and on the notes I said, on the right it said 400 huts on right. So I thought it was a village. Ran down to the village. Went into the village waving French francs, saying, anybody want to come and, in my useless French, do you want to come and help us get the car out? So some of the villagers came back up and we couldn't move it. I was sinking up to sort of here at times in this quicksand, and the front of the car was actually getting lower all the time. And then Tony came along, and Tony said, okay, I'll pull you out on one condition. I win, you don't. Don't mind how we do it, but I'll tell you out. And he said, you do realise that they're cannibals? Yeah, okay. Tony pulled us out and we potted on down the road. Nobody finished that rally. Tony went out of time, we went out of time, we had a strut break, and nobody finished it. I think it was the only World Championship rally there's ever been where there's been no finishes at all. That was the last time, seriously, I navigated. At the end of the Datsun thing, I got more involved in motor racing. But I had a dream of doing my own thing in the World Championship. Datsuns were heavy. Had a team manager a guy in Japan, team manager, who thought that just being there competing was all that really mattered. And I wanted to win. So I said to Andy Marriott, who at that time was running John Player Special Formula One PR, said, can we get into British American Tobacco and talk to them about getting money to start our own team? And I said, look, we'll run Datsuns on gravel and go and buy Michelotto Ferraris, where's he gone, on tarmac. and we had schemes drawn up for the John Player special livery for the cars. And British American Tobacco were interested. They were saying, okay, maybe. It didn't happen. And then suddenly one morning I got a phone call. We need you to come and talk to us urgently. We've committed, we as 555 Cigarettes have committed to sponsoring a rally in China, and they've already had 2 entries, both from Marlborough sponsored teams. They suddenly thought, shit, we're going to sponsor the event and Marlborough are going to go and win it. How much to set us up a rally team? And by the way, you're not the only person we've asked, but how much to make sure we win it? When I did the German Rally Championship in a Datsun, I had a guy called Arvid Fischer co-driving for me who worked at Audi. And I phoned him up. I said, Arvid, I need some cars. To cut a long story short, I started the 555 rally team with a pair of Audi Quattros, put Hanu in car 1, and I went in car 2. Had never driven a Quattro before, hadn't got a clue what I was doing. You soon learn to brake with that foot, because you can't brake with that foot. You can't use the clutch with that foot because there's no clutch to use. It's on the gear lever. And we won the first Hong Kong Beijing. We won the second Hong Kong Beijing. And then Group B got canned, so suddenly the Quattros are useless. Still got the Quattro that's in Bewley, the Hanu car. That's in Bewley. I was with it last week. And I built 2 Sierra 4x4s for the 3rd year. And again, too much to drive and team manage and with new cars. So we put Ari in the second car, had Stig in the first car and Ari in the second car. And I'm very specific, by the way, about that. Car 1 and car 2. You lot probably think I'm crazy, but that's where I felt. And at the end of the 3rd stage, I'm there in my management car, and it's a straight line, this rally. And so all the service cars all have to go through the stages as well. So you have to put your service vans up ahead to be in the right place for then the rally cars to go through the vans. But I'd found ways round. And at the end of the 3rd stage, Stig comes in. Andy, this car is so slow. Okay. But what can we do? Nothing we can do about that now, but, can we improve it? Oh, it's too soft. Well, why is it too soft? Well, it crashed through. Okay, all right. Let me think. And then Ari arrives. Swedes and Finns chattering together. Ari comes and says, Andy, this car is too soft. Okay, so why is it too soft? It crashed through. Okay, so how many times, you've just done a 36k stage, how many times did it crash through? Once. So I reckon I got it spot fucking bollock then. So anyway, I go round to the end of the 4th stage, which was a 25-kilometre stage, if my memory serves me. Wiggly. Imagine a Welsh B road, probably got some roads like this up here. Nice windy sort of road along a hillside, gravel, really slippery. I've gone round. I'm at the end of the stage. Stig arrives. Stig, you okay? Yeah. But the car is so slow. Okay, fine. Tell me. What time have you just done? 14:46. Your record with the Quattro last year was 15:30. Should we talk again about the car? It just shows drivers haven't got a bloody clue, have they? And then one of the disappointments of my life, leading the event ahead of factory Nissan, factory Toyota, factory Opel, going into the last gravel stage of the rally, effectively the last stage of 2 little tarmac ones up by Beijing, just to look after some spectators. And Stig goes in with minute 50 lead. So Bjorn's got to catch him and pass him in the stage to beat him. Fine. So I said, there's going to be lots of dust. Just make lots of dust, lots of sideways, don't go too hard, and we got it won. And I'm going over this, we're on a satellite map, what looked like a road and it wasn't. And I rolled the management car, but we managed to get it back on its wheels again, and so rolled it, put it on its side in a ditch. And we got it going, and we got down just before the end of the stage, and I heard the radio crackle. Andy. Yes, Bruno? The car has stopped. Where are you? 1 kilometre from the end of the stage. The car has stopped. I've got Roy Hingston with me. I said, Roy, you're the fit one. There's only one thing can stop that car. That's the distributor or the ignition pack. It's the only thing that can stop it. You were going to say something? No? And I said, take a distributor, take an ignition pack, and get running. And he started sprinting into the stage. Bjorn still hadn't come through. And he gets to Stig. Bjorn still hasn't come through. And so gets the bonnet open, and Bjorn comes through. And Roy said, hang on, let me just try. He gets the ignition key, turns it, and it starts. Closed the bonnet. Off they went. Finished second. Still to this day don't know why it stopped, but the ignition key was in the off position. And Stig drove for Ford the following year, so I suppose you can only read into it what you read into it, can't you? And it was, Ford didn't like the fact that I got a 4x4 working, because it was a cheap, relatively cheap car, and they wanted to make Cosworths. They wanted to make Sierra Cosworths because they thought that was the right way to go, both rallying and racing. All right, it worked in racing, but did it really work in rallying? I don't think it really did. Anyway, yeah, that's sort of my basic rallying, what I've done. Daihatsus, I suppose, a certain Daihatsu code right here.
I have a question about Datsus, but I think it's an appropriate time for a quick beer break. So
yeah, and then you can ask me some rude questions.
Thank you very much. We'll have a 15-minute break. Before we go on, I've got to congratulate one of the newest motorsport world record holders. I think that's fair to say, isn't it? Yeah, you've got a new world record. You hold a new world record.
2 weeks ago, I moved the goalposts. I've been doing. I love driving. I love being involved in muddy cars. And 6 years ago, I did a thing called MPG Marathon, driving a Focus, and we won the class. Great. And I said to Ford, look, by now somebody should have gone through 100 mpg with a diesel. Now, this is over a 400-mile route where you've got to average 30 mile an hour, so it's road rallying type rules, and some of it's quite tight, but they also take you through the middle of sort of Birmingham or middle of Manchester or something, so you can't hang about. And we were lucky, we got 108 mpg out of a diesel Fiesta, and that moved the goalposts and set a new world record. Driven various cars over the, I did use a transit van, broke the records in a van. 2 years ago I won it in a Mustang, 5-litre Mustang, because they have a class, a category that is the best improvement over the manufacturer's standard fuel economy. Well, on a Mustang, it's 22 mpg or something. It wasn't too difficult to beat that, and I got 40 mpg. And it was a lovely car, but at the end, after they'd filled it up, I'm sitting in the car park and everyone's round saying, how the bloody hell has he got 42 mpg out of a Mustang? I put the line lock on and floored it and just covered everybody in smoke. That was lovely. Anyway, last year Ford said to me, do you think we can do anything with new Fiesta? And I said, yeah, I'm sure we can. And we ran 2 Fiestas. I took the petrol one and brought a guy called Paul Clifton and Ian McCain into the diesel one. They got 122 mpg in the diesel. So they held, until 2 weeks ago, the record of the best mpg ever recorded. I failed. I only got 98 out of the petrol Fiesta, but nobody had ever got over 82, so actually I was quite happy, but I wanted to get the 100. I wanted that magic 100, and I was really pulling all the stops out to try and do it. And 2 weeks ago I did an event called the Leomani Cup, which is the oldest of the MPG events in, I think, probably the world, but certainly in the UK. It was first run in 1914 or something. And because it was a very short event, only 80 miles, I took a Mondeo hybrid. Mondeo hybrid is not plug-in. It's not, you don't plug it into the mains and charge it up. It's self-charging. When you go on the overrun, like on a Formula 1 car, you touch the brake pedal and it charges the battery back up. So you've got regenerative, hey, not this time, right? Regenerative braking. And I charged the battery up well full before I filled up with Gulf fuel at the start, and did the event, went all the way along Clacton front, Frinton front, Walton on the nays, all at sort of 25 mile an hour on the battery, just ticking over on the battery, poor internal combustion engine getting a bit lazy and thinking, come on, use me. At the end of the event, I thought I got somewhere about 110, 112, and it was going to be a new petrol record. When the organisers announced that I'd won it at 123.77, it was a new world record. Wow. Better than all the diesels, but with a petrol. Anyway, it's there.
Absolutely.
There was one snag with this, as Nigel knows, on the way up. I've had the BBC on because somebody has said that Mondeo is about to die, and they were desperately trying to find a news story, something tied into Mondeo, and they found this press release from Ford 2 weeks ago saying, oh, Mondeo gets 123 mpg and it's petrol and it's wonderful and it's great. So they're all phoning me saying, can we talk to you? And the reason I can't get pissed tonight is
and I'm trying to get him.
I've got to be sober tomorrow morning because 7:30 they're phoning the pub here. I'm on breakfast time.
So you've got to listen to...
Me being rude.
You're not working on a new record of words per time, are you?
Piss off.
You should have told us that now, they know it's not over, yeah. Everyone's going to be watching that.
What do I say? What do I call him? Christopher?
Mr. Evans, you mean?
Yeah. Can I be rude?
Certainly. He's going, it doesn't matter, does it?
No, it's a form of motorsport that actually, it's very similar to road rallying when I first started, because the navigation's quite difficult and you can't afford to make a mistake. But there's something we found now, which is he an organiser, this guy? Yes, he is, isn't he? He's an organiser. So don't listen to this. He can't listen to this. What we were doing during the event, John, my co-driver, had this on, and he was on Google Maps and Google Earth. So he knew there was a right slot coming up, but he wasn't totally sure where it was. We didn't have a trip in the car, other than the Ford Big Dash, and the Ford Big Dash, you can't actually do intermileages or anything. So what he was doing was he was Google Earthing and finding the junctions and seeing what they looked like before we got there. Okay, you don't know what is going to be in the middle of the road, but at least you know how tight it is.
Isn't that how they run World Championship nowadays?
Probably. I mean, I'd never thought of it.
It's all by waypoints.
You know, he's ahead of us because we use this just to look for traffic, to look for how we got to try and go around. And the one thing you can't afford to do is to have to stop in 80 miles on Leomani, I actually had to stop twice. Once when some lights changed, and I was thinking I'm going through, and there was a copper standing there, so I had to stop. And once when was that me? And once when I came round a corner and there was some temporary traffic lights, and we hadn't seen them on the Google Earth, because he's running through on Google Earth. The temporary lights weren't there. But that was the only 2 times I used the disc brakes. All the rest of the time I used the regenerative braking. Amazing. Hybrid's the way it's all going. But why doesn't somebody up here? You've got some wonderful roads to do it on. Organise economy type driving. You'll all enjoy it. You can take your road car, your bog standard road car, and you fill it up at the start. Set your trip. The organisers note the mileage. You run around the route. You have some secret checks just to make sure people are taking the right route. But you check the mileage at the end to make sure they haven't taken a massive shortcut. 30 mile an hour average. So you've got to be on the ball. You fill it up at the garage at the end. What MPG have you got? And it's a day out. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
We've got a contrast to your previous life, though, isn't it?
What?
Bit of a contrast to your previous life.
No. I'm still as sideways in the corners, I tell you. You want to try driving a Fiesta down a steep hill into a 90 left.
With no brakes.
No, no brakes. How are you going to get maximum economy?
Keep as much speed through the corner as you can.
No. When you've got no engine. Sorry?
Can we do the lowest MPG
Hey, the Model T Ford that was doing the same event got 12.7. But, you know, you can have all sorts of classes and all sorts. It's good fun.
Fantastic.
But then, and you guys should try one.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, nothing ventured, nothing gained, and you can be in the Porsche if you like. As long as it's not a KN like mine that does 12 miles to the gallon, you're all right.
Do we want to talk about the Datsun days?
Yeah, I stopped before that.
How did the Datsuns come about? That was a most unlikely rally car, wasn't it?
Daihatsu, the real reason for that programme was Daihatsu were negotiating with Toyota for Toyota to take them over. Big style, big money, megabucks. They decided they wanted to up the spec, the name in Europe, so that Toyota were more interested. And this guy, PR man, turned up in my office one day. He phoned up and said, "Can I come and meet you, come and talk to you?" And he came in, he said, "I'll be totally honest, I'm going to ProDrive, I'm going to..." And he got 5 people he was going to, and I was one of them. "Can you turn a Charade GTTI into a rally car?" 1000cc, turbocharged, 100 horsepower, no weight. Yeah, I don't see why not. And I worked out a budget, but left slack in it and left open, unanswered questions. And I said, "But actually, before we finalise this, I need a car. Let me have a car to look at." So he sent a car up, and I fell in love with it. Lovely little thing. And realised it was running no boost, and realised that actually wind a bit of boost on and it was going to give some grunt. And I read some stuff on the internet, which I rarely believe these days, it's getting worse, where it said that in Japan they were getting 120 horsepower out of them. We started developing it, and Terry Cabey agreed to drive it, with Kevin, my old co-driver, sitting beside him. I was Dillis with him to start. Anyway, Dillis was with him on some events. Dillis, make sure you put the tampons in the service car. And no problem. We started with the engine, and I realised that we couldn't do anything with the ECU. So I went to a mate and I said, "Can you make me an ECU? The FIA regs say that the resistors in the ECU are free. Define a resistor. A transistor. Every single chip inside an ECU is a resistor of some sort. So I got clarification. I got a clarification from the FIA that I could take the board out of the ECU, toss it, and put my own board in. As long as the plug was correct, they would accept it. So I had a bespoke ECU made, and effectively it's a Motec. And we got initially about 155 horsepower just by reprogramming it for power, not for fuel economy. Throwing a lot of fuel in, etc. Come the end, when we finished second in Group N on the RAC to Gwyndaff in the COSI, we had that event, we had 176, 177 horsepower with a lot of toluene, 17% toluene, about 4% nitro in the fuel. It was legal. I checked it with the FIA. I said, is this okay? We had to go to Edinburgh to buy the fuel. We had to buy base, cheap fuel in Edinburgh, take it back down, add all the constituents, a brew. And they had 175 horsepower, and the gearbox, second gear, second or third, you never knew which one was going to go first. On tarmac, it was third that went first, at 75 to 80 kilometres, 50 miles of special stage. And...
Better than a COSI. Better than a COSI.
Yes.
It's about the same as an Astra at the same time.
And I always remember at the end of Ulster, you were involved in the Astra. I always remember at Ulster, the guy sealed the gearbox. He said, I'm sealing this gearbox now, and I want to see this gearbox at the finish, and I'm going to count the number of teeth and measure the width of all the teeth. I've got the specifications, and I am going to check that your gearboxes are legal, because a lot of people are saying that your gearboxes aren't legal. Who drove into the end of the event. It was you bastard. And drove into the end of the event to the scrutineering, and he said, I want that gearbox. I said, well, I'll go and get the casing out of my management car, but here are the teeth out of the gearbox. Handed him a plastic bag with all the teeth in.
We weren't in a position to challenge at that event anyway, were we?
I think it was all...
Our hotel had got blown up by you.
I flew to Japan. Immediately after the RAC, they said, come to Japan. We want to do a world championship operation. And I went to Japan and talked to them about doing world championship. We couldn't persuade the FIA to make a class championship. You'd be doing each individual event running against the World Rally Championship boys. Bloody stupid. They wouldn't put in a baby Group N class. If they'd done that, we'd have done a World Championship programme. And it just all petered out.
Shame really, because it was quite a nice package, wasn't it?
It was a super little car, super light, super easy to work on. First time we did a gearbox change in the workshop, being very careful, it took 3.5 hours. The quickest we ever did one was, I think, on Roger Duckworth's private car, when he won the class on the Audi Sport in the National Championship, was 8.5 minutes.
Shaved a bit of time off that.
We could just beat that in the Astra. Just.
We worked out a way of doing it with the guys that were doing the bell housing bolts, which usually ended up being me, Muggins, was on an extension that was that long. So and we drilled holes in the inner wing, so you went through the inner wing whilst the other guy was underneath doing the little bits, and undid the bell housing bolts with a spinner, not with a power gun, and did those, and we'd changed half of the bolts, would change to studs, I think. I can't remember the detail, but it was such that you just pop the box out, pop the new one in, and then you went back in with the extension. Easy.
So you do it enough times, you get good at it.
Oh yes, absolutely, absolutely. A couple of things that I've done which might be relevant. I've done some very odd rallies. Dave Orrick sitting back there somewhere, navigated for me on a caravan rally. And biggest problem on the caravan rally was that Pondy was in a very factory 2.5 PI Triumph, and there had to be cars you could buy over the counter, right? So that should have been a 2.5 PI fuel injected Triumph. Oh no, it had triple Webers on it, and hot cam, and a limb slip diff, and all the right bits and pieces. And we were in a, what were we in, David?
Austin Princess.
You'd be mad if you found one, wouldn't you?
But this was the nice bit. Going on to the last test of the event. Pondy is in front of us. And the last test of the event is drive forwards into a box which was 50% longer than the rig. Am I right?
Yeah.
So you're driving into a box in the middle of a square box, and they've set it up so that it's 50% longer than your car caravan combo. And Pondy are coming up to me and saying, "What's that lever for there, lad? Yeah, what's?" And I've got a funny T-bar right beside the handbrake. I think you were even wondering what the T-bar was for. And we'd been clean through the night. We'd had a very clean run, but we were too slow on the stages. The Princess, lovely car, lovely and comfy. Did we actually go to sleep? Did the radio work? I think it did. Anyway. Pondy goes into this box, and he drives in, pulls up into the corner, and his co-driver jumps out, it runs around, and he undoes the caravan, and he moves it, shuffles the caravan round, and Pondy does a sort of three-point turn, and they hook the caravan back up again, and out they drive. But they've had to reconnect all the electrics and do it all very properly. Fine. And I've got a sort of wry smile on my face. Because at this point, Pondy is like 20 seconds in front of us. And I went into the box, and he's got his helmet on and his eyes closed and saying a few Hail Marys. And I pulled, first of all, through full lock on, pulled first of all the car handbrake, then this magic lever, which locked the wheels on the caravan, turned the power on, dropped the air brakes on the caravan, dropped the handbrake and drove out.
All within the space.
Oh, we won. We won quite easily, didn't we? Have you still got the trophy?
Somewhere, yeah. The one trophy they never gave us, Andy, was you going over Epping onto the new road, giggling like a bloody fish and going, "It's still there. I'm trying to shake the bastard off, but it's still there." I discovered religion that night.
Another event that I enjoyed was going to...
Sorry, I've got to interrupt you at this point because now's a right good time. You did mention before that you had something you wanted to get him up for.
To?
Get Dave up for.
Don't worry.
Are we going to save that one? Okay.
One morning I was lying in bed, newly married, and I suddenly sat bolt upright, as you do, because the phone's ringing. And it was my old mate Andy Marriott who said, "Can you build a rally car in a week, or find a rally car in a week? We've got to have one on an aeroplane to Paraguay. Marlborough need us to take a European rally car to Paraguay to do a rally out there in the Chaco." We found an Avenger, converted it to a Tiger, or Group 1 spec, whatever you want to call it, put it on an aeroplane, and got on the same plane. And we landed, and they have to transship the car and us from one plane to another in Rio de Janeiro. And we then go to Paraguay. And we land in Paraguay, which is a tiny little country, about the size of the Isle of Man, but has a turnover in cigarette trade such that every Paraguayan would need to be smoking 100 cigarettes at any one time all day. Because it's the smuggling capital of the world, from Brazil to Argentina or Argentina to Brazil. It's a smuggling capital. We land in Paraguay, and I said to Marriott, there must be somebody famous on this plane. Look, there's TV cameras and things there. It was us. TV cameras are there because the Europeans are coming to do the Chaco Rally. And we're taken straight in a limo to have lunch in front of the TV cameras. Now, when I say have lunch in front of the TV cameras, I mean have lunch in front of the TV cameras. There's this bloody TV camera watching me cut my meat up. And sitting next to me is a man that, to me, was one of the nicest people in the world, Juan Manuel Fangio. And I'm starting to get to know this guy. He's a real nice guy, as well as being the best driver there's ever been. And I cut this piece of steak, quite tender, stick it in my mouth. I can't bloody chew it. I can't make it break up. And I've got a TV camera with the red light on, showing me that it's watching me. And so all these bloody Paraguayans are laughing at me, trying to eat this bloody piece of steak. And Fangio taps me on the knee, because he could see that the camera was on me. And he goes, and he then told me it was chewing steak. You don't digest it. This is the very tasty but indigestible steak. The rally started. Oh no, we had a special stage, like a rallycross track, but one at a time. And I don't think the Paraguayans had ever seen anybody drive an Avenger broadside. And I went round this rallycross track, and halfway around the first lap, there were so many people in the track that I stopped. I was just frightened I was going to kill somebody. I mean, your British spectator safety, forget it. The apex point was people's knees, and the exit point was people's knees with the back bumper.
It was like Portugal then. It was like Portugal then.
Yeah, worse ever than Portugal. Did have a camera lens in my rear bumper once in Portugal.
No.
And they said, we're going to give you a rerun. And they went round with their sticks, the policemen, and made people move back a bit. And I started a run, and I drove, going quite hard, because I'm thinking, well, it'd be nice to start first on the road. And I'm going well, and there's this long right-hander, like sort of Gerrard's at Mallory. And I'm sitting there on full opposite lock. I come on, it's on grass. Come on, get some grip, get some traction. And I can feel this dum, 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 at the back, and I'm thinking, I hope that's not what it feels like. And we come onto this straight bit, and there's a man with a checkered flag, and I slow down and think, oh well, that's it, done. I didn't make a mistake. I've done what best I can. And suddenly there's people running towards me. And I thought, shit, if that was people's legs, I'm in trouble. And I locked the doors.
That's just been him down south, that.
And they start shaking the car. And then Marriott appears at the front of the car doing this, you see. And he comes out and he's open the door. And they drag me out the car and throw me up in the air. And I thought, shit, I'm dead. But no, they took me to some podium, because they'd never seen a European drive a car broadside before. Rally starts, and we come off the start, and the halder's not working. And we're going into Chaco, which is jungle, difficult jungle. And I said to the commentator on the start ramp, the speedometer cable's been cut. And somebody actually been underneath with a pair of side cutters, or snips, and cut the speedo cable. So I said, I need a speedometer cable off a Dodge Polara. And he went, in Paraguayan or Portuguese or something. And I said, if somebody could get me a speedometer cable to just before the ferry, as we're leaving the town, I could fit it while we're on the ferry. And drove out the town, through the town, special stage, through the town, across the traffic lights, broadside, thousands and thousands of people, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Clock in at the ferry, and there's about 50 people with speedometer cables for a Dodge Polara. And I see a pretty girl and I say, thank you very much, and give her a kiss. And it looks right, the ends are correct. And so I start taking the speedometer cable off the Avenger to put it on. And we then get on this ferry, which I knew we were going on a ferry, but what I didn't realise was the ferry was a few oil drums and a few pallets. And I'm trying to change the speedometer cable underneath the Avenger. And there are crocodiles in the water. And one of the things that they'd done before the start was to say, do you know how to use a gun? I did, Marriott didn't, and we both had to shoot a gun to show we could actually, and they gave us a gun each to put in the car. And they gave us a machete about this long. And they said, you need those with you just in case. Okay. Marriott had found this lady, this girlfriend, this lady friend, and he persuaded us to make us some sandwiches so that we wouldn't go hungry during the event. And she'd put these sandwiches into an ice box, and we put the ice box behind his seat and wedged it in, fine. And we went into the jungle, and we had a rear shock absorber break, and I stopped to change the rear shock absorber on the side of the track. I said to Marriott, you stand there with this machete. And I said, Andrew, pass me a 9/16. Andrew! He's back in the bloody car, isn't he? He's so frightened. And I'm lying underneath the car thinking, well, never mind, let's get this shock absorber changed. We go through the night. We come to one bit where it was really tricky navigation, and both of us were sort of navigating. I was working with him, and there was a bit of red rag tied on a tree. And I said, do you think that's telling us not to go that way or go that way? And we went further on, and it was wrong. I said, we're going where that bit of red tape was. We went through there. And we get to this gate. And the gate is locked, padlocked. I said, it's cuckoo. And I could hear a helicopter. Not in the air. It was on the ground. I said, I reckon somebody's fiddling with the gates. And could hear the Toyota coming. And the Toyota comes, and the Toyota's going away from us. And I'm still trying to get this gate open. And it went that side of us. So we went back, and we found its tracks, and sure enough, the fence was down, straight through. They closed the bloody gate just to hold us up, to get in front of us. Got back past the Toyota again. And we got to...
You didn't push him off when you did it?
No. He was so bloody slow, actually. It was anyway. Dawn breaks, and we get to our service for fuel. Pour fuel into the car from a service van in a relatively slow area. And fill it up with fuel, absolutely chock bang full. And off we go down the main road. And I said to Marriott, there's obviously some bloody good irrigation going on down here. Look at all these coils of pipes that are at the side of the road. Bloody great big coils. And I said, don't look as though there's enough of them to put a proper pipe in, but never mind. And we get to the end of this road section, and I pull over and say, I'm going to have a pee before we go any further. I went across to one of these coils of pipes and started having a pee, and it moved. Giant anacondas. I mean, hundreds of them, and they were that sort of diameter, you know, that had swallowed me quite easily. We went on, and the Avenger, bless it, started pinking its head off. The service crew had tried to save me money by going and buying cheap fuel instead of avgas, and the poor thing just, head gasket went, and we were stuck in mud. So I said, well, at least we can have one of those nice butties that your girlfriend's made. And we took the top off the butty box, and the butties were floating in the water. She'd forgotten to wrap them, hadn't she? Or wrap the ice, one or the other. When you're in that situation. Anyway, we got back to Asuncion, and I went to an incredible Marlborough party where, first of all, they had fairly gently clad ladies walking along the table with Marlborough written all over them and things, and this was Marlborough's way of titillating the men. And then they had some boys, some Marlborough grown-up boys, and the women. To see these bloody women at this dinner attack these poor boys. They didn't get down one at one of the tables, but never mind. I was sitting with Stroessner, the president, and his girlfriend, and his wife, and his mistress. And I then learnt from the mistress that the Toyota that had won, the driver had been disqualified. And that the guy that had finished second had won. I said, well, why was he disqualified? Well, the marshal wouldn't give him the time he wanted, so he shot him.
That's one way of getting the results, isn't it?
Don't try that over here. Oh, I've had some fun.
You're talking about South America, and we talked earlier about, not here, before, about Walter Ainsworth, who unfortunately,
bless him,
isn't with us. But Walter had a fair old story with a Nissan in South America, didn't he?
I won my first ever rally outright in Walter's Avenger road car, which was a rally up here somewhere. I can't remember the details of it. And when I saw him a week before he died, bless him, I asked him what the name of the event was, and he couldn't remember. And he couldn't remember a lot by then. He couldn't say a lot. But I tell you what, I was so glad I came up to see him and took him down the pub and got him pissed.
It was the Preston Crest Stages.
Thank you.
1977-ish, 8-ish?
No, 72, 73.
Was it?
It was, am I right? It was this neck of the woods.
Yeah, it's the headquarters of the Preston Crest Hotel, next to the big bus station, if anyone knows it. Yeah.
Anyway, lovely guy, Walter. But he, because he was working with me, a guy called Helge Kirkland von Stein, George Kirkland, came to me and said, Andy, can I buy a rally car from you? And I sold him my best rally car that I use. That car scored more World Championship points, that actual car, than all the other Datsuns put together in a 3-year period. It was the car that reduced San Remo 3rd, Corsica 5th and 3rd. Tony Pondy drove it with Grindrod in Portugal, which was the last time we ran a Violet. And it was a body shell that we'd built over here, not a Japanese car. I persuaded Japan to give me a body shell and let me do what I wanted to it. And I sold that car to Jorge. And Jorge said, I need somebody to service it. And Walter happened to be sitting in the corner drinking coffee or a pint of beer or something. And I said, Walter, do you fancy going to Peru? And they hit it off, and he went to Peru a number of times. I have now got the remains of that car, rebuilt, fully rebuilt, in my workshop. I've got the engine waiting to be rebuilt, and it is going to come back together again, and will be in the spec it was used in Portugal for the last time when I finally get it going again.
Am I right in thinking that was the car that they set off into the rally, and they started off at sea level and went up into the hills, and halfway through the stage Walter had realised that the altitude was changing that much that they had to stop and change the jets and the carbs?
I'd given him the jets to change.
Oh, it was your idea, was it? Well, definitely that was Walter's idea when he told the story.
3,000 metres. It went up. 15,000 feet. I mean, you know, suddenly it's far too rich. You've got to weaken it off. I think he had 3 sets of jets in his pocket. One of the ways I made the Datsuns work, and this is something that people don't think about. Salonen, I always gave him the better car. And I was always the backup car, if you like. And for the 79 RAC, Timo had it's now out in the open, it was a 2.2 litre engine instead of a 2 litre engine. It shouldn't have, anyway. But I had 2 Hillman Imp cooling fans, heater fans, mounted just below the carburettors, blowing cold air onto the bottom of the carbs. And this is because I was competing, doing events, doing nationals. I realised that off the line, the car always felt sluggish. So you'd be sitting on the start line, tick over, tick over, tick over, tick over, blipping, and it was a non-cross-flow engine. So you've got the carbs sitting on top of a red-hot exhaust manifold. And the carbs, from Japan, they came with a heat shield. Fine for safaris and things like that, we got air coming in through the front. But I realised that for the first 2-3 miles of every stage, the mixture strength was wrong. Because you got very hot carbs, relatively cold air, and you were losing power. And I put these 2 fans on, and the reason I put Stuart Pegg in the car, not Seppo Harjana was Timo Salanen's normal co-driver. But I demanded, the Japs didn't like it, Timo didn't like it, and I had a bit of a row with them and said, you've got 2 choices. Stuart Pegg sits in the car, or the car doesn't start. Or I'll put a hacksaw through a half shaft and it'll get halfway through the first stage. And the reason Stuart Pegg sat in there was because we didn't know the legality of what we'd done of the 2 extra fans. And Timo, I knew, and Seppo, I knew, wouldn't switch them off halfway through the stage or 2 miles into the stage. And I needed Stuart Pegg in the car who would do as I had asked him to do and turn the fans on with a minute to go. You couldn't turn them on too early. You've got to get the temperature just right. And you couldn't leave them on too late. So you had to judge it a little bit. And he finished 3rd on the RAC. I finished, 8th or something, having rolled it in Dalby or somewhere. And that was because we had these extra fans blowing cold air on the underside of the carburettors. These are the little things that people don't think about. And today with fuel injection, I suppose you don't need. Sorry, I'm going off on all my tangents.
Can I just ask, is this true? I agree, because you were renowned back in the day for technology and what they're doing some good things with cars. Was it on the Avenger where, I think it was in Group 1, where they wouldn't allow you a high ratio rack? But do you want to carry that story on? I thought it was brilliant.
On the 73 RAC, Des lent me an Avenger. And it was the old development car.
Was this before you threw the ashtray at him? Was this before you threw the ashtray at him?
No.